And now, in studio, bringing his Midwest values from the Show Me State to the land of San Diego. He's a triple threat, licensed as an attorney, mortgage broker, and a top producing realtor who's crushing the competition. Here to deliver you what's happening in the trenches of the market. Your host, Michael Gaddis.
Welcome back to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170 The Answer. I am your host, Michael Gaddis from michaelgaddis.com and frontierloangroup.com. And we're going to continue with our discussion on how to select a real estate agent to help you in a purchase. And there are different skill sets required of selling a house, for agents selling a house, and for agents that are representing you in a purchase. And so it's not like, there are some that can do both, but there, a lot of times you'll see that there are specialized buyer's agents and listing agents. So there's different type of skill sets because you look at the situation differently from a different perspective depending on which side you're on. So my whole purpose in telling you this is because I'm telling you right now, if you or someone you know is looking to buy a house, you better turn up the radio, not pay attention to anything else, and listen to what I have to say because it is extremely important. One of the big things that happens when you want to purchase a house, when you sit there and make that conscious decision, yeah, I want to buy a house, is as I told you, everybody under the sun is going to start flooding you. Everybody you've ever known that's had a real estate license, and even some you didn't even know have real estate licenses, are going to fall out of the woodwork. I mentioned last week that, your door will ring and you'll see Bob from the gym standing there still in the sweat clothes. He'd be like, I heard you were thinking about buying a house. He's just got off the pec deck or something like that and he's still there. And then your phone will ring and it'll be your Aunt Jean that you haven't talked to in like 5 years. And she's like, yeah, you remember, I sell, I help people with houses. And, everybody under the sun's going to come up and try to help you. But what you have to do is learn a couple things. Number one, never mix business and personal relationships. Never, ever do that. You will get yourself in a lot of trouble. You do not know how many times I get phone calls from people that tell me, well, I was using my brother-in-law to help me and now we're not talking. Or my sister was helping me but now we're estranged and I can't even go to family functions. Or my ex-best friend was representing me. Happens time and time and time again. Because once you get money in between that relationship, everything, it changes. Because, a lot of times they'll tell you, oh, well, it doesn't matter whether you buy it or not. But when you've got a big commission sitting there at the end, all of a sudden their motivation changes. So it's very easy for you to interact with somebody who you only know from a business purpose rather than someone you know from a familiar purpose. Because otherwise, I'm telling you, Thanksgiving's going to be extremely awkward if something goes wrong. And, everyone always says, well, I don't think anything's ever going to go wrong. That's what everyone always thinks, but the reality is things do go wrong. And I think that it's important for you guys to make that separation between, between business and relationships. And so that's my advice. That's my number one piece of advice. Number two is understand that not all real estate agents are created the same. That everyone, and I think that's probably the biggest problem that people have, is they think that real estate people are interchangeable. That there's no difference between Aunt Sally and their cousin George. There is a difference. There's a difference in knowledge. There's a difference in education. There's a difference in experience. There's just an overall difference in ability. And between real estate professionals, there are, I don't even know what the number is now, of how many people in San Diego County actually have real estate licenses. It would blow your mind. And the reason they do that is because they figure, oh, it's fast, easy money, I can help somebody and make a ton of money, and everybody wants to do that. But, you know, real estate's a grind. It's tough. You got to earn your stripes. And it's just like anything else. You learn more as you go along. As you get exposed to certain situations, you acquire knowledge, you carry that knowledge on to your next client, and you just keep building and building and building. So the more transactions you do, the more knowledge and experience you have, the better you're able to handle things. And some of us are just capable of doing more than somebody else, you know. I mean, just like I tell somebody on, you know, when I talk to them, I said, look, here's the bottom line. I'm going to tell you 4 reasons why basically I'm different than anybody else that you will find in the real estate industry. And there are 4 reasons. Number 1, obviously I'm a real estate broker. You might find other real estate brokers. Number 2, I'm also an attorney. Okay, so you might find some brokers that are attorneys. Number 3, I'm also a mortgage broker. Well, you know, it's possible, but very rare, that you might find an attorney that's also a mortgage broker and a real estate broker. And number 4, I host a radio show. So you find anybody who has those 4 that's got anywhere near the experience of me, and I'll say, okay, but it's very hard to find. But they're just, as I was mentioning, some people can just bring you more. And that's the problem with people, especially when they're buying houses. They just don't understand. What they'll do is one of 2 things. When you're buying a house, you're going to do one of 2 things. Either you're going to look online and you're going to see a house you just love. You're going to look up there on Zillow or Trulia, and somebody's face is going to pop up there, and you're going to say, I'm going to call that guy. Now, if you call that guy, he may or may not be the listing agent. Your goal might be to talk to the listing agent. I don't know. But you're going to call that person, okay? And you don't know this person from Adam. They're just paying to advertise there, and boom, you've called them, and now they're your real estate professional. I mean, you don't know anything about them. All you know is you saw their face up there. Our number 2, the other thing you might do is consciously try to go to the listing agent and say, well, I think I'm going to get a better deal if I go to the listing agent, so I think I'm going to go straight to them and try to see if I can get a better deal. Here's the problem. When you go to the listing agent directly, that creates something called dual agency. And dual agency is something that I'm conflicted on in a lot of ways. Because dual agency creates fiduciary duties to 2 sets of people that are in different positions. What a fiduciary duty is a high level of responsibility to your client. You have to put your client's best interests ahead of your own. Now, I'm going to tell you a quick little story about why dual agency can be problematic. There was a guy who used to work in my office, and he came into me and told me that one of his good friends was getting ready to buy a house in Valley Center. And he said, yeah, this house is on 10 acres, it has avocado trees, it's a perfect house for him. I asked him, I said, well, does your friend want us to represent him? And he said, well, no, he says he thinks he's going to go directly to the listing agent because he thinks he can get a better deal. And I told him, I said, well, tell your friend to be careful. I said, because here's why. And this is one of those reasons why I told you finding an agent that knows loans will become very helpful. I told him, I said, look, because he's got so many avocado trees on this property, it's going to be probably agricultural purposes. Now, it's very difficult to get Fannie Mae to approve loans that have agricultural purposes on them. So he might have trouble getting his loan. It might take a little longer than normal because he's going to run into a couple of little bumps along the way because they're not going to like the fact that he has those, it could be used for agricultural purposes. So I told him, I said, beware of that. So he said, okay, I'll tell him. So he told his friend that, and his friend, of course, went straight to the listing agent again. So about 7 or 10 days later, I asked him, I said, well, how's your friend doing? He says, well, he's having a problem with his loan. And I said, well, that's exactly what I told you was going to happen. And he says, yeah, and he talked to his agent about getting him an extension for the contingency release of the financing. And I said, okay, well, what did his agent say? And he says, well, his agent, is hee-hawing around saying, well, that the seller expects him to close on time. See, let me tell you what's going on here. When you're in a situation where you're having trouble with your loan, your agent's job is to try to get you more time without releasing contingencies. It's try to negotiate an extension of the contingency period. Because if you release contingencies, that puts your earnest money deposit at risk. So in this situation, his agent should have been pushing for him to get more time from the seller. However, his agent was also the seller's agent. So from a listing agent perspective, your job is to get those contingencies released so that your client gets the money in case they default. So that's what they were running into. They were running into this problem where there was a conflict between the two of them, because he had duties to both the seller and to the buyer. So, you know, I think that this is one of those things where it becomes an extremely difficult situation because you have a conflict of interest between the two of them. And the situation gets worse because in the end, this guy, I mean the agent and the buying agent and the selling agent, who were the same person, became more and more conflicted as the buyer had more and more trouble with the loan. So the problem is that as he needed more and more time, the selling agent was starting to put pressure on him, saying, nope, the seller's not going to do it. So his own agent became adversarial with him. So they had created this agreement where he was going to close escrow by a Friday, and he said, if you don't close on Friday, you know, you're out. So the buyer agreed to release contingencies in exchange for this extension to the Friday, because his loan officer had told him he could close by Friday. He gets docs on that Friday. He signs his docs, finds out that the listing agent has already accepted another offer. So they call his listing agent and say, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, I didn't think you could fund today." And he says, "Wait a minute, my lender table funds, which means they can fund the deal the day he signed. So he signed in the morning, they could fund it right away and record it the same day." So it created this whole massive problem. So, you know, as I told my friend in the office, I said, you know, he really should have gone with someone like me from the beginning, and he would not be in this situation now. And that, just so you know, that happened over a year ago, and this guy's still in active litigation over this property. This property's still in litigation because, you know, the new buyer, the old buyer, and everybody's upset with everybody, and the property's still just sitting there. So, you know, it's one of those situations. Be careful of who you select to help you buy your home. That's all I'm saying. And watch out for dual agency. It can be very tricky. Well, after the break, we're going to continue our discussion about selecting real estate agents and looking for loans. You're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer.